LEGO branded themes like modular buildings and LEGO City have super deep plot lines, especially when it comes to the minifigures. Sometimes they're criminals who live life on the run, villains who get turned into a new species, or random people that end up flat out dying. Today, I have 19 more LEGO minifigures with hidden lore for you. Starting off with the death of Baron von Baron. Now, if you watched my first video about minifigure lore, you'll already know that he was the main villain in the LEGO Adventurers theme, and that he got his own haunted house set called Manor von Baron, which was haunted by Pharaoh Hotep. But there's something about this set that I didn't tell you. If you go upstairs to one of the rooms, there's a skeleton hanging upside down from the ceiling wearing a top hat. Now, at first, this just seems like a creepy decoration for a haunted house. But if you actually read the official instructions for the set, there's a line of text that changes everything. It says, "Some say Sam Sinister's car exploded while running from the law, leaving only his skeleton and top hat behind." Now, you might be wondering what this has to do with Baron, but Sam Sinister is actually one of his other identities. So this isn't just a random skeleton that LEGO threw in to make the house look scary. This is literally Baron von Baron's dead body hanging in his own house. Or is it? The instructions also say that some say there was once a third twin butler, and that no one knows for sure. So did the Baron fake his death? Is this really him? We have no idea. But this next minifigure is 100% dead. No questions asked. Blacktron Future Generation, also known as Blacktron 2, was a space sub-theme that ran from 1991 to 1994. The minifigs were basically just doing villain stuff for 3 years, but then the theme ended in 1994, and everyone kind of forgot about them. But fast forward over a decade to 2009, and LEGO releases a Nintendo DS game called LEGO Battles, and one of the storylines is about the Mars mission theme. There's an intro cutscene that plays when you first start, and in this cutscene, an astronaut named Biff lands on the Martian surface and walks right past a skeleton wedged in between two rocks. If you pause the cutscene and actually look at that skeleton, it's wearing the full Blacktron uniform, so this is without a doubt a dead Blacktron member. This is super similar to the Aqua Raiders minifigure that died in the Atlantis theme, only this time this Blacktron skeleton didn't even get a real-life minifigure. But here's the thing. Dying wasn't even the worst thing that happened to a Blacktron astronaut. In 2024, Series 26 of the collectible minifigures came out. The theme for that series was space, and one of the minifigures is called the Blacktron Mutant. This minifigure shows a Blacktron 2 astronaut who's in the middle of a biological transformation. One of his arms is split and mutating, and one of his legs is already fully gone. According to the official description, this transformation was caused by exposure to alien technology. But there are transformations that are way worse than this, especially in the Hidden Side theme. This theme ran from 2019 to 2020, and it was all about a town named Newberry that got invaded by ghosts. This wasn't your typical ghost story, where spirits just float around and scare people. The ghosts were transforming people into monsters, and one of the most disturbing transformations is the Bawa. Before everything went wrong, this guy was just a normal train conductor. He worked for the Southeast Berrymont Engine Railroads, and during the Newberry haunting, something called a gloom mutation hit him. In Hidden Side lore, gloom mutations are what happens when humans get transformed into something from cosmic horror. So this regular train conductor got turned into a bat zombie hybrid thing. He even got a superpower that paralyzes his prey. But the Bawa's story is nothing compared to what happened to Anomalo. This guy used to be a high-class seafood chef. He was successful and good at his job, but then the Newberry haunting happened, and his soul didn't just get corrupted. It got merged with cockroaches, multiple of them, and somehow it gets even worse. He didn't just transform and then live as a monster. He became one of Lady E's tools in her soul collecting mission. Lady E is the main villain of the Hidden Side theme, and her whole goal was to collect souls for whatever evil reason. Anomalo now has extra arms growing out of his body and tentacles that move on their own, and he's being used as a tool to help collect more souls. But let's move away from horror for a second and talk about something way more lighthearted. In LEGO City, there's a criminal who's become kind of a legend among fans. and his name is Stumpy. This guy first showed up in a set called Wild River Escape, and he's a criminal who stole some treasure and is trying to escape the police on a raft. And apparently, he was able to get away because he shows up in a completely different set called Mountain Police Headquarters, and he's disguised himself as a tree to avoid getting caught by the mountain police. Because of this disguise, LEGO gave him the nickname Stumpy, and it's one of the funniest LEGO City criminal disguises by far. And speaking of LEGO criminals, let me tell you about a manhunt that's been happening across multiple different CMF series. In 2013, Series 13 of the CMF came out, and one of the minifigs was the Sheriff. His official bio says that he's captured every single outlaw in the West, except for one guy who keeps getting away. And if you look at the wanted poster that comes with him, it shows the Bandit from Series 6, which came out 3 years earlier in 2010. So LEGO made a storyline where this sheriff has been hunting one specific criminal for 3 real-world years across 7 different minifigure series. But now, let me show you a transformation that took over 30 years to be revealed. Back in the 1990s, there was a castle sub-theme called Fright Nights, and the main villain was a character named Basil the Bat Lord. The Fright Nights theme was all about this spooky medieval horror aesthetic, and Basil was at the center of it as the big bad guy. The theme ended in the 90s, and Basil kind of just disappeared from LEGO. But then in 2024, over 30 years later, Series 25 of the CMF came out, and one of them was called the Vampire Knight. At first, this just looks like a random vampire wearing knight armor. But if you take off the helmet and look at his face, you see that he has a very distinctive mustache, the exact same one that Basil had back in the 90s. Turns out this is the official canonical fate of Basil. He became an actual vampire at some point after his theme ended. But enough about transformations. With this next minifigure, LEGO expanded the lore in a way that made us completely rethink what we knew about him. In the 90s, there was a castle sub-theme called Wolfpack, and back then, they were just known as forest bandits. That was pretty much their entire identity. But then in 2025, Series 27 of the CMF came out, and one of them is the Wolfpack Beastmaster. This character has an actual wolf companion, and the description tells us something that completely changes the Wolfpack. They weren't just random bandits who liked wolves. They were actually a culture with deep ties to the animal kingdom. The Wolfpack had a genuine connection with wolves and other animals. LEGO completely humanized them with just one minifigure. But now, let me show you a character who waited 22 years to get a physical minifigure. In 1999, LEGO released a video game called LEGO Racers, and the final boss was a character named Rocket Racer, but he only existed in the video game. There was no physical minifigure of him. Now, fast forward 22 years to 2021, and LEGO releases a city stunt set, and in that set is finally a physical Rocket Racer minifigure. And LEGO didn't just throw together some random racer and call him Rocket Racer either. The details here are matched perfectly. And speaking of characters who waited decades to show up, let me tell you about Camilla and Bo-Son Will. Way back in 1989, LEGO published a Pirates comic book. In that comic, there was a character named Camilla, who was the Admiral's daughter, and she had a crush on a character named Bo-Son Will, who was the quartermaster on Redbeard's pirate ship. These characters existed in one comic book and weren't seen again until this year, when the minifigure vending machine set came out. In that set, there are grown-up versions of Camilla and Bo-Son Will, and according to the lore, Camilla didn't just grow up. She followed in her father's footsteps and got promoted all the way to Admiral herself. So we're seeing a romance that started in a 1989 comic book finally get updated 37 years later, and it's kind of a Romeo and Juliet situation, which is pretty funny for LEGO. However, Ninjago has always been a theme with super deep lore. And I'm gonna tell you about a character who's been part of that lore since the very beginning, but only just got a physical minifigure. The first Spin Jitsu Master. This guy is basically the god of the Ninjago universe. He's the one who created Spin Jitsu and created the world of Ninjago itself. He's been mentioned in flashbacks and referenced for years as this legendary figure, but you never saw his face clearly, and there was never a physical minifigure of him that you could actually buy. That is, until until this year, when the Old Town set came out to celebrate Ninjago's 15th anniversary. This set finally gives us the first Spinjitzu master with a fully revealed face, which is so sick. He's like the most important person in all of Ninjago. And while we're on Ninjago, there's another character who finally got a physical minifigure recently. Liber. She's in the Ninja character display set, and if you're not deep into Ninjago lore, you might not know that she's Jay's biological mother. Jay is one of the main ninja, and he's the master of lightning. But before him, that title belonged to Liber. In the story, there was an event called the Serpentine War that happened generations before the current ninja team was even born. And during that war, there were elemental masters who fought to protect Ninjago. Eventually, Liber ended up becoming the master of lightning, and she passed that power down to her son Jay. But until the character display set came out, she'd only been mentioned in backstories. So now we finally have a physical minifigure. But there's one more Ninjago character I just have to talk about: Krux. Krux is a villain who posed as a museum curator named Dr. Sanders Saunders. His whole deal was that he was pretending to be this curator while secretly being a villain with evil plans. Way back in 2017, LEGO made a minifigure of his younger self in a set called Dawn of Iron Doom. But for 8 years, there was no minifigure of his older disguised version as Dr. Saunders until 2026, when the Old Town set came out and LEGO finally gave us one. And here's what makes this minifigure so perfect. It has a double-sided head, one that shows his friendly curator expression and another that shows his angry villain face. LEGO literally built his double identity into the physical minifigure, which is awesome. But now, let me show you a really deep connection over 25 years of LEGO history. In the Monkey Kid theme, there's a set called the City of Lanterns, and in that set, there are these robots called Citybots A05 and A16. They're just background characters helping out in the city, but if you look closely at their heads, you'll notice that they're using a very specific head print, and it's actually the exact same one that robots in the Spyrius and Explorian sub-themes used in the 90s. These Citybots are a direct reference to a droid in the Mystic Mountain time-lapse set from 1996, which is super specific. And speaking of space sub-themes continuing in modern themes, there's an alien character in the Space Police 3 sub-theme named Craniac. But if you look at his back, he has the 1998 Insectoids logo printed on him. And weirdly, his original name was Insectoid Zim. In the lore of the Insectoids theme, there were these refugees called Zotaxians who came from a planet called Holux. And apparently, these refugees didn't just disappear when Insectoids ended in 1999. They became part of the far future Space Police Society, and Craniac is the proof. But now, let me tell you about a minifigure whose job description is absolutely wild when you think about it: the Zookeeper. She came out in Series 5 of the CMF way back in 2011, and obviously she seems like a normal city zookeeper. But if you read her official bio, you find out that she's not just responsible for taking care of animals in LEGO City. She takes care of creatures from a bunch of different LEGO themes. She manages dragons from the castle theme, rock monsters from the Power Miners theme, and even escaped dinosaurs that were brought back from Dino Island. So this one woman is basically running a zoo for every kind of animal in existence. But not every piece of minifigure lore is about big storylines and connecting themes. Sometimes the lore is just really personal and sweet, like Rocket Boy from Series 17, who's based on a real person. Specifically, he's a sig fig based on senior design manager Tara Weich's son. She's one of the designers at LEGO, and her son was obsessed with space exploration when he was younger. So she designed a minifigure based on him and made it a reality. It's not the craziest piece of lore, but it's super wholesome, so I had to talk about it. But what was your favorite piece of minifigure lore in this video? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.